Mr. Chair, you are live.
Thank you. Welcome to the March 16th Planning Commission meeting. Call the meeting to order. Can we have the roll call, please, Kimberly?
Sorry, I was muted. Mr. Pline,
Present.
Ms. Pico,
Present.
Ms. Butler,
Present.
Mr. Imes,
Present.
Mr. Sale,
Here.
Mr. Svakianudis.
Here.
We are not expecting Mr. Waldman. Mr. Chairman, we have 6 present.
Great, thank you. Okay, first order of business tonight. Let me bring up the agenda. Okay, first order of business tonight is the approval of minutes, and the minutes from February 16th were deferred at the last meeting to this meeting, and we also have the minutes for the last meeting, March 2nd. I'm going to abstain from the March 2nd meeting, voting on those minutes because I was not present at that meeting. So let's do them separately quickly. So can I have a motion for the February 16th meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the February 16th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstentions or nays? Okay, thanks. The February 16th meeting minutes are approved. Can I have a motion for the March 2nd minutes?
I'll motion.
Second.
Any discussion on this? I had one comment. While I wasn't there, I did watch the video and to prepare for tonight's meeting. But one comment that I had in the discussion of SDP 2022-003, the 161 West Street project, about the residential parking permits. The way it's written says that residential parking permits were discussed as a solution. While that's probably technically accurate, it may be a little misleading that they really are not a solution for parking, because people in the MX zone are not eligible to participate. I don't know if anybody wants to change that wording, or it's just a little.
I understand what you're saying, Alex. I made one comment where I just asked if, because there was a building there prior at one point, whether there's, if that's an option, because there was a building at one point there before.
Okay.
Before it was part of the MX, and it was kind of a grandfather thing from before, and I just didn't know if that was an option.
Okay, I mean, so if you guys are fine with leaving it that way, it's okay with me, because it's technically accurate. But since I wasn't there, I'll leave it to you to just either leave it or ask to have
So,
it.
Mr. Chairman, to be clear, are we not changing the wording for that?
Well, I'll leave that up to the commissioners that were there. I just wanted to raise that because when I read it, it seemed a little.
I think it doesn't need to say as a solution. I think it could be just they were discussed, because I just questioned whether there was an option there. We never really got a legal opinion or anything on that, and it didn't
Well,
go
you can
any.
change, maybe you could just change the word solution to option.
Or just said it was discussed.
It was discussed, yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
it was the parking in the garages and residential permits were discussed.
Mhm.
Okay, if you would make that
All right,
change, Kimberly, that would be great.
so noted.
Okay. Okay, ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
and I'm going to abstain. So, and any
Aye.
nays?
Sorry, that was a late eye.
That's 5 ayes, and 1 abstention.
5 ayes, 1 abstain. Okay, great. Nothing under old business. And so that brings us into the meat of our meeting tonight, which is the continuation of the public hearing from March 2nd on SDP 2022-003. It's the major site design review for the proposed development, the vacant lot of the southwest corner of West Street in Colonial Ave, 161 West Street. Let me stop sharing my screen. Before we get into, so the public hearing is still open, but before we get into the public comment that we have, staff, Mr. Smith has requested the floor to answer several questions that were raised at the last meeting and provide some other relevant background. So with that, Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I did forward to the commission 3 public comment letters earlier today that were received before noon, 2 via online, 1 was an email. Both of the online persons, one checked to testify, and then Alderwoman Tierney asked if she could testify as well, though she neglected to give live testimony. So hopefully they are here to provide testimony, and you have those 3 letters for the record.
Yep.
I wanted to answer Commissioner Walbin had a few questions from the last time, and I wanted to give a little bit more background on West Village and where I might fumble. I hope that Mr. Danek may jump in and correct me perhaps. But so this project before you tonight, this building, if you will, is phase 2 of West Village. It's a 2-phase project that the department has been working with Mr. Danek on for over 20 years. And originally where the Knight Garage sits was part of Ramsey Music, all redeveloped. And this piece on the corner had actually already received site design approval twice in 2004 and 2008. And we have previously waived the parking for the project twice. So for the department, the waiving of the parking spaces is frankly the 3rd time around, an extension of that. And we really hope the commission will vote favorably, because frankly, this is an epitome of an urban infill project. It really checks all the boxes when you look at urban infill, particularly on a corridor where the last 25 years, the redevelopment has taken sites that were included undesirable activity, for lack of a better way to say that, and created a corridor that's really become a bit of an it place in Annapolis, and very, very successful. So I just wanted to make sure the commission had some background that this is a phase of what was a multi-phased project called West Village. I think it's pretty safe to say the rest of the project has been successful, that the developers here are Annapolitans. They live in the neighborhood. They're not, hey, I'm from DC, I'm coming to build something and I'm going away. They're here, they run the businesses, they employ people. They are committed to Inner West Street, and frankly deserve some kudos for what they helped create on Inner West Street. As far as the questions that Mr. Waldman asked, he asked about the awnings and the balconies, and were they permissible encroachments into the public right of way. And I have worked with Public Works, and in fact, they are permissible into the public right of way. The one awning on Colonial Avenue has to be shortened a bit. And we met with the applicant yesterday. They understand they have to modify that piece of it. But all of that meets code. So that hopefully answers Mr. Waldman's questions about awnings and balconies projecting. Mr. Waldman also asked about sidewalk cafes. And sidewalk cafes are permissible on Inner West Street. You have to apply to the city clerk's office and get a permit for that. And he was really looking for what's the clear distances, pedestrian movement that is by clear distances with a sidewalk cafe. And So I met with Public Works again on that detail. If your sidewalk is 10 feet or wider, and that is the case on West Street, it's 11 feet, you need to leave a 5-foot clear space. And these distances come out of the ADA, American for Disabilities Act regulations. If your sidewalk is less than 10 feet, which is the case on Colonial Avenue, it's a 7-foot wide sidewalk, you must maintain a minimum of 3-foot clear space. So the applicant will have to apply to the city clerk's office for a sidewalk cafe if they desire to have outdoor seating on West Street or Colonial, and will have to meet those parameters. And I think one of the other questions that Commissioner Waldman asked also was, could these units qualify for parking in, I believe, what's titled District 3 in Murray Hill? And the answer is no, they don't, because they're new units. Existing units do qualify. But I will note that when Ramsey Music was here, there were 3 units above Ramsey Music. So we're really talking about a net increase of just 3 units. Perhaps the code ought to be lightened, that if you're redeveloping and you had existing units that qualified for parking, you could still qualify, but that's not how the code reads. So we've agreed to waive the parking for this project. And if I'm missing something, please let me know, but I think those were the brunt of Mr. Waldman's questions.
Based on my review of the video, I think that covers it. Does anybody else? And thank you for doing that. I think that's especially on the sidewalk space, and it is very clear. If I could, and I don't know if you would have an answer for this right away, and I'm not sure it's necessary to get a definitive answer right away if you don't have it at the top of your head, but on the balconies, beyond it being allowed to intrude, is there a depth limit? I mean, obviously there's a practical depth limit, but
there is, Chairman Klein. Give me one moment, and I will look at.
I have it in
pull-up.
front of me if you want me to answer that.
So from my emails and meetings with Public Works, who was kind enough to go out and look at the project for us and explain section 1420 in the code. If a sidewalk, again, is over 10 feet, which is the case on West Street, a balcony or awning may project up to 33 inches into the right of way. I think the furthest projection we have here is 2 feet 7 inches into the public right of way. So that is well within the parameters there. On Colonial Avenue, since the sidewalk is under 10 feet, a projection of 21 inches is permissible there. And the one balcony on the corner projects 2 feet 9 inches. So it has to be narrowed down to just 21 inches. And in our meeting yesterday, the applicant agreed to narrow the awning there on the Colonial side when we get to the permit phase. Hopefully that's helpful, Chairman Klein.
yeah. So the amount that an awning or a balcony could protrude it's the same.
Yeah, it's dependent on the width of the sidewalk, which is why
Right,
they're
but
two
I mean, it's
different.
not like you can't have a more protrusion for an awning versus a balcony. It's the same protrusion.
Correct.
All right, good. Thank you. I think that makes it all really crystal clear.
Great.
Good, thanks. Okay, any other clarifications from the last meeting before we get into the hearing from the public?
I have
Okay.
a quick question. Oh,
I
sorry.
have my hand up.
You had your hand up?
Good.
Should I go or?
Yeah,
put
go
my
ahead,
hand up?
Dave. Yeah.
Okay, so can you just repeat the 10, the 10-foot sidewalk parameters?
As related to the sidewalk cafe or to the awnings?
Exactly.
The Sidewalk Cafe?
Sidewalk cafes, yes.
Yes. So under the Sidewalk Cafe rules, as it was articulated to me, if your sidewalk is greater than 10 feet wide, you must leave a 5-foot clear space between objects or the curb and your tables.
Okay, so that would include like if there's planters and stuff, there still should be 5
Yes.
feet. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's the only question I have.
Okay.
I think this is very clear and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Oh, yeah. So Tom, I just had a question about the ability to put any green infrastructure whatsoever on this building. And I realize because the limit of disturbance is less than 5,000 square feet, legally, they don't have to do anything to improve our watershed or to do any kind of like any action plan with respect to runoff. But because of our bay requirements and our goals under our watershed action plan for the city, I'm pretty sure you guys, when you meet with applicants, encourage them to do things like green roofs or other things. And in this case, they hadn't done anything, and maybe by now they've made some alterations. But do you see any reason why they couldn't do a green roof on this building?
Well, I'm certainly not going to pretend I'm the authority on green roofs. Commissioner Butler, I will tell you, with the overall redevelopment of West Village and the Knighton Garage, that stormwater management was provided as part of that. I talked to Public Works earlier. They told about a storm scepter that exists, and I believe it may be in the alleyway between the Knighton Garage and the buildings that front West Street. When the applicants and I met yesterday, we did talk about not only the green building materials and the green construction, but we talked about perhaps having solar, and I will actually defer to the applicants for that, but that the possibility of putting solar panels on the roof, which we have done on several other buildings on Inner West Street and been successful with that. So we certainly encourage that, and I will let them speak, but they seem amenable to it when we talk.
Okay, oh, great, thanks. But in terms of the green roof itself, it takes more work and probably more money to establish a strong enough green roof for that. And I just don't know what those costs are, but it sounds like maybe they've thought of that or have ruled it out. But in terms of the structure itself, we don't know if it's strong enough or sturdy enough for that kind of a feature.
I do not have an answer structurally on that, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
So Mrs. Butler, I could take a stab at that. We did not, we looked at a green roof several times on a couple different iterations of this building. And unfortunately, we can't make it work with the 3 stories and with the egress off of the roof right now to be able to get access to it. So one of the things that we talked about, and it is also over residences, so it poses a whole nother issue in terms of structural supports. But I mean, one of the things that you brought up, excuse me, last time was the possibility of solar. And that's something that we hadn't thought about. This building is very environmentally friendly. It's a mass timber building, all wood. It's going to be beautiful. And I don't know why we didn't think of solar, and you prompted us to think of solar. So we're going to pursue, if it's possible, even if it's only a small amount of power that can get to us, we're going to pursue trying to put solar on top of the roof. There is an access for maintenance. That's a ladder, but it's not for residences. It's not for normal people to go up on top of that roof. That roof is strictly for maintenance. And if we could put some solar up there, we certainly would. And I think it was a great suggestion. We're gonna look into it seriously.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Anybody else have questions for the applicants or for staff before we finally get into the public testimony?
I have an item to clarify from last time.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
It was asked about a trash room.
Ah.
And we've added a trash room to the plan at the first floor. The trash room will be accessed off the alley. It'll be approximately 6 by 7 feet. It'll be both a room for storage of trash bins and also the bin wash room, which is a code requirement. You have to provide a room to wash the trash cans, and the drain at that roof has to connect to the grease trap. So that has now been added to the floor plan and will be part of the submittal.
Terrific, thanks. That's one of the questions that I had prior to the last time's meeting. So thanks for answering that.
Another point that was brought up at the last meeting, the question was asked whether there's bicycle parking available in Knighton Garage. I confirm that there are 2 bike racks according to Knighton Garage. There are 2 bike racks in the garage. I was asked about the durability of the ground floor exterior finish system, which is a stucco system. And at yesterday's meeting with Planning and Zoning, it was clarified that that'll be evaluated. The durability of that finish will be evaluated as part of the evaluation for the building permit. Samples and specifications and data supporting the durability of the product will be part of that application package submittal. And I think that covers everything that I had that hasn't been covered by others. Thank you.
Thanks. And this may be a clarification for staff on the last point about the stucco, because that's also a question I had is the durability of that versus, something like a brick skin. So if you intend on evaluating that as part of the building permit, what happens if for some reason the people who approve the building permit aren't satisfied with the durability? What happens there?
Well, those people would be staff and I, frankly, Mr. Chairman, and we do this regularly. Applicants are required to submit material samples. Sometimes we get it in the form of a board, and sometimes we get it in the form of just individual sample materials, which is why there is a condition on most every site design and plan development that final architecture and the materiality, we look at those. And we wanted to be flexible because we weren't as familiar with this product. We've heard about it, we've watched some YouTube videos about it, but we actually want to see it and touch it and concur with that. Not too dissimilar to several decades ago when hardy siding first came out. We were unsure about that, and to be honest with you, in some neighborhoods like Eastport, it's actually more hardy than it is cedar shake. So we just wanted to remain flexible to new materials and new technologies.
Okay, good. I mean, I think you guys have enough experience with that to have exercise good judgment. So thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are the questions I have. Anybody else before we get into the public testimony? Okay, Julian, do we have, I know we have Alderwoman Tierney who wants to testify, and we also have somebody else. So can we bring them forward, and we can start with Alderwoman Tierney?
Actually, so far we only have Alderwoman Tierney, but she's coming forward right now.
Okay, great.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Take it away.
Okay. Well, hi again, Tom. We just had a city council work session on the comp plan, so I just saw Tom. Thank you for allowing me to provide public testimony, and again, thank you for all that you do in your review of these projects. Former Governor Paris Glendening was ahead of his time on the merits of smart growth in 2001 which was 22 years ago, he wrote a template for the state of Maryland supporting infill development, which he described its merits as follows. Quote, infill development fills gaps in existing communities and plays a critical role in achieving community revitalization, resource and land conservation, and alternatives to sprawl development. Although the current number of infill housing starts is quite small, in the context of all new development, it is emerging as a viable long-term method of reducing pressure for sprawl development. Infill development conserves a community's financial resources by taking advantage of existing infrastructure, increases walkability by contributing to safe and attractive pedestrian environments, and creates new opportunities for mixed-use neighborhoods that recapture the, quote, sense of place, end quote. That is largely missing from development projects during the past 50 years. This source was the Managing Maryland's Growth Models and Guidelines for Infill Development in October 2001. So rereading that, it was with dismay, I guess is the word, that at the March 2nd Planning Commission meeting during the site plan review of this project, the discussion seemed to quickly morph to parking, and also some environmental concerns that I thought were clearly incongruent to the primary objective and benefits of this development. That is, it is geared towards a car-free, sidewalk-enhanced, pedestrian-friendly urban environment. And additionally, what this block of West Street speaks to, the developer also understands that we don't want a residential canyon on West Street, and it offers a restaurant opportunity on the storefront level. It's built on an existing lot where utility ties are readily accessible, and with the existing city code, stormwater, and environmental controls, it will be an improvement on what is now a more attractive and less obtrusive during construction. A mass timber construction method will be utilized. This method has been documented by scholars to benefit the climate in 3 ways. Trees capture and store carbon as they grow. Long-lived wood products lock in carbon, and these products can be used instead of high-impact materials like concrete in many cases. So in summary, as Alderwoman of the ward and as a nearby resident, I strongly support this project and its focus on the aforementioned smart growth principles. Hopefully, many more will follow its lead on redeveloping underutilized lots on West Street and elsewhere in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderwoman Tierney. That was very well put. Does anybody have any questions for Alderwoman Tierney? Great. Well, thanks. We'll certainly stick around, for the rest of the public testimony in case anybody does have a question that pops up.
Okay.
And as Mr. Smith mentioned, we did receive 2 other comments, one via the form, one via the email, and I won't read them here, but only to mention that they were both in support of the project. So to this point, we received several pieces prior to last meeting that most of them were positive. I think there was one that was had some concerns about parking, but for the most part, the comments we've had on this project have all been positive. So are there any other Julian or staff, there any other people lined up to testify from the public?
Sure, I don't have anyone else here.
Okay, well, I don't, in light of no further testimony and no questions for Alderwoman Tierney, at this point, then I will now declare the public hearing over these two meetings closed. Thank you. So at this point, typically we will go into our deliberations, and before we do that, I wanted to give the opportunity of the commissioners to ask any final questions of the applicant, if anything else has come to your mind before we get into our deliberations.
Should we at least acknowledge the letters we've gotten by name? Siagny.
Sure. You have those. You have those handy, Ben? You want to do
I
that?
mean, but at times we would bring them up and show them when there wasn't many, but at least I guess we should acknowledge them so that people know that we got them and read them.
Yeah. Okay. I have them here. Gina Siagny, is that? So I apologize.
Sounds good enough. Close.
Pronounce the name. That was one letter. That was the email, and the other one we received was from Karen Hainline on Colonial Avenue, who was endorsing the project. And she made a comment about in fact, places like Park Place don't have balconies. So I think she was worried that was maybe going to be a problem. Anyway, but that was a favorable comment. And the other written one from this time was Alderwoman Tierney's written comments that were very similar to what she just made, the testimony she just gave orally. Okay. I did have one question, again, because I wasn't at the last, wasn't able to make the last meeting, and this is just a question, I guess, for Mr. Danik mostly. And it's around the choice of 3 apartments per floor versus, say, 4. In my looking at the plans, seemed like probably could have gotten 2 efficiencies instead of a 2-bedroom. Is there? I'm just curious the choice on that. Not that that's really for us to determine. That's really you and Tom and your business model. But given the need for housing, especially something that's smaller that ultimately would have a lower price point. I'm just curious why a 2-bedroom, given that there's unfortunately a lot of Gucci housing around in the city that stop in multiple bedroom. So anyway, that was my question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that question. We have gone through, I think Mr. Smith had mentioned, this is the 3rd or maybe the 4th iteration of a building that has been, one of them went all the way through to building approval, and then the financial crisis hit, and all of our tenants left. And that building actually was in a different height district, and it was it had 4 stories, and it had 9 apartments, I believe, with first floor ground MX zone retail. And so we did try to squeeze, because I like the idea of having a smaller footprint, a smaller space. There's all this tiny homes and all that stuff. Everybody thinks it's cool, but the reality is these, it would be difficult to put another efficiency, I think, in this footprint. It's a pretty small, when you put the, you have the elevator shaft, and then you have the stairwell on the outside, you have the setback away from lemongrass. It shrinks this footprint pretty much. And of course, there's the impact on the community with parking, which is always an issue. And that's why that parking waiver, the 3rd time now that we've been approved for it, is so crucial and so important, because, I don't think anybody wants to see a 12-story building there, right? They want something that goes with the community and with the neighborhood. And this is just sort of a perfect in between. It's 3 stories, it's 6 small, I don't want to say small, because some of them are 700 square feet, which is pretty good size. But the smallest one, I think, is 575. which for a single person or a couple or single person, it could even be really used for somebody who only spends a couple months a year maybe in Annapolis and goes back and forth to Florida or Arizona or something like that. So we think that this size is a really good size. And again, it's about scale. We're in 36 feet height district. The Lemongrass or Metropolitan right next door, I think, is about 38 feet. And so I think it fits nicely with the streetscape. And again, we're going to put a restaurant in there, hopefully a restaurant cafe type concept that we're coming up with. And it's going to add to the walkability that Alderwoman Tierney had talked about. So we've been involved in this project since 2003. It's not a small time invested.
Yeah, I was really just curious about the, whether you could actually fit two efficiencies instead of the one 2-bedroom. And it
I'd
sounds
like to address that in addition to Jody's comments.
Sure.
These apartments are required by code to be adaptable per the ADA. They don't have to be accessible at this point, but adaptable means that they could readily be converted to accessible apartments. And it mostly is changes to putting in grab rails in bathrooms and changing counter heights in the kitchen and this sort of thing. That means that the bathrooms are a little larger than they would be in a non-adaptable apartment. And while it might be possible to fit four non-adaptable efficiencies into each floor, with the size of the bathrooms, they're also making it adaptable means certain size restrictions in kitchens. You would also be adding a fourth laundry stacked washer and dryer closet. I don't think it can be done.
Okay. I was just sort of in looking at the layout, that's the first thing that sort of jumped at me. But that again, that's not really for us to decide. It was just more curiosity of mine. So, but thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. Okay, anybody else have questions, comments?
I have comments, but they can come in deliberations.
Yeah, I mean, questions of the applicant before we get into deliberations. Okay, well, at this point, we're going to head into our deliberations, and I guess for the applicants, if you'd certainly stick around just in case we have questions that come up, but certainly we're gonna go into our deliberations, but please feel free to stick around, in the background in case we do want to bring you forward with any questions that we might have.
Yeah, I was trying to talk, couldn't get a word in edgewise between Dave and yourself, but yes, I did have another couple of questions.
Oh,
I was asked about the balconies for modifying them and adding another one, and also pushing them out. And I know Tom just talked about restrictions and things with the balconies, but what'd you guys decide to do? Keep the design as is, or like Bob was talking about with the balconies, change them up?
Yeah, so we decided, we like the fact that there's small footprint and Juliet balconies, and so they didn't encroach on the West Street side, and I can let Dan speak to this too. The balconies didn't encroach on the Colonial side as well. They were within the 21 inches, I think, that were required. It's really the wooden awning that's more, it's more an aesthetic thing that does.
Bob, or I think it said maybe make the balcony bigger and add another one. There was one other window that could have a balcony. I don't know what's behind it, but any thought to that, or gonna keep the design as is? We can't drive you to that, but
no, I don't think we want to. I mean, these are sort of balconies to allow some fresh air in as you open up French doors. And they're small enough to fit maybe a chair and have a cup of coffee out there. But certainly, I don't think we want to see people hanging out on the balconies necessarily.
Oh,
You know,
well,
it's more about aesthetics.
that's a shame because I like that idea, but that's all right. But it's up to you guys what you want to do. But it would be
I
nice, and I'm for balconies. On another note,
Right.
as far as these apartments are concerned, they're going to be owned by individuals or owned by the person that owns the whole building. And also, is there anything that stops them or does permit them to be used as Airbnbs?
So,
our plan. Go ahead, Jody.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you can go ahead, Tom. That's fine.
So our plan is
who
to keep. Yeah, so we would own the entire building, the restaurant underneath, as well as 6 apartments above. There's no plan at this time to Airbnb them. And I know there's some regulations within the city that have come up in terms of limiting Airbnbs. So it might be a moot point by the time you get done with them, but there has been no discussion whatsoever in terms of Airbnb them. None.
Okay, so they're going to be owned. One owner will own the entire building, not selling any of the units.
161. Yep, 161 West Street will own all 7 units, so 6 apartments and the downstairs restaurant.
Yeah, so 6 and okay. Talked about the roof. Me personally, I'd love to see some usage of the roof for the people. If I guess in the future, maybe that could be done in a modified plan. Who knows? But for that, I'm for balconies. If you guys wanted to add more and extend them out even a little further than they are. Let's see. What other questions did I have? Not debating, but questions. I'm starting to go into debate. My apologies. The parking, it was stated that there was no, initially by staff last week or 2 weeks ago, stated that there was no parking requirement. And now we're stating that I think it was stated that we're actually waiving the requirement. So could I get clarification from staff if that actually was a requirement is waived, or they met it and there was no requirement?
Yes, Commissioner Sales. In the MX district, the planning director has the ability to waive up to 75% of the required parking. And this would be the 3rd time we've elected to waive the parking. One, because Knighton Garage is right behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe last time it was stated by, I'm not sure by who, I apologize, that it was full. But in my conversation with Department of Transportation and AP Plus, there is availability for monthly passes in both Knighton Garage and Park Place Garage.
Yeah, I can confirm that. I called SB Plus yesterday and asked those same questions, and they said, sure, come on down and sign a contract.
Yes, I had a good conversation with the regional manager.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they need to update their website.
They did, because
Imagine that.
Both places show open.
Yeah.
Great.
I think all of us probably have a website that needs updating. It's like the last thing you do. So what was the original parking requirement required for it without a waiver?
Commissioner Sales, that's a good question. I'd have to go back because we looked at it phase 1 and phase 2 collectively when we granted the original waiver. And this building, and Jody Mr. Dannett can correct me if I'm wrong, it has gone from a commercial mixed use residential to an all commercial, now back to a commercial and residential mixed use building. So I think this waiver is actually less than the original parking waiver that we granted.
Yeah, and my point to staff and for future code that the city goes by is, yeah, we have the built-in safety valve of we can waive it, but wouldn't it be nice if we already had it in the code where in sensible situations like this, you didn't even have to deal with the waiver in the first place? You know what I mean? So something to think about for the notes in the future and code and what we work on.
I hope the alderpersons are listening. Commissioner.
Yeah, but that's a lot of work. So anyway, that's all I have. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Ben. Okay, so at this point, any final opportunities for questions? Okay, good. So we're going to go into our deliberations at this point, and I think we'll stick around and we'll you can hear how we go. So at this point, anybody want to start? There you go,
I'll
David.
start.
Get your hand up. All right, good.
Okay, So first things first, I think people shouldn't assume that we're going down a certain route when we just started a planning commission meeting, but we have to do our due diligence. I am very satisfied with this project. I think it's checked off all the boxes. I really appreciate the questions that were answered today, especially about bicycle parking and about the trash bins. Those are two things that were just kind of like not clean in the whole thing, in the whole situation. The parking, it is what it is. If there's no parking available for them, there's no parking available for them. It's not guaranteed. I just hope that the developer or whoever is the landlord just makes it clear to people so they don't try to get parking passes later and be surprised, like what happened at West Street. I am happy with every part of this. I'm happy with infill development. I think it's great that you're looking into the solar, and I hope that happens. I understand the issues with the balconies, and I think they're pretty much, from what I understand, I was reading, he said it's 2 feet 7 inches, and the maximum we can go is 33 inches. That's only 2 inches short of the maximum we can do on West Street, I believe. So it's not like you can bump it out that much more, just 2 inches. So I'm very happy with that. So I have no problems at this point.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Obviously, this is an infill project where parking requirements on such a piece of property where it's located would be like trying to ask somebody to make a parking garage to accommodate a huge building in Manhattan. It gets to a point of, what are you driving at? And sometimes we have to drive other solutions to be made for parking in the city and other things like that with people's actions and the way they're going to be. So a building like this is going to drive people to be more walkers and bikers, like Mr. Healthy in Shape Alex Pline over there. I wish I was you at times. So it makes sense. The building makes sense where it's going. I was wondering where the sign was for the I drove by and I couldn't see the sign alerting the public to the meetings, but we've had it up for 4 weeks now. So there's ample opportunity, and pretty much I think everybody in the city, because the newspaper and whatnot, should know by now that this is going on. It's to me, it seems like the building could go a little higher based on the parking garage behind it and what's next to it on the eastern side. Making more utilization of the roof. I hope the developer does that if they get approved. The awning over the sidewalk, I'm not a big fan of limiting them. I mean, I kind of like an awning that protects people in the rain, lets them wait out there. The balconies, if they wanted to add another balcony or extend them, I mean, that all sounds good to me, but they would have to get a waiver. They're probably not going to change the design at this point. The sidewalk limitations explained by Tom. Sorry that in the past that when we passed off the sidewalk dining over to the city and staff to make all the code exact measurements and requirements be such that it'd be sane, because to me a 3-foot allowance to walk by is what would give us a problem now, especially during St. Patrick's parades and everything else on those big weekends. People are walking out in the street trying to get around on a sidewalk that they used to be able to walk up and down because sidewalk dining has taken it over. So that's one of those other things we got to tackle as a city, but that's not going to stop this project. It makes sense. I like what we have so far. I'm surprised you're able to cram that many units in there. It drives towards a more walkable younger person, an older person without kids. I get it. We need that. And kudos to you. And I hope this time you get it through without some natural disaster coming through and ruin your day with loan rates and everything else. So it's I'm for it. And parking, there is parking at the Graduate across the street. There's parking down the street. There's lots of parking if you wanted to be a resident that works in the city but keeps your car at the Westin Hotel. It's very affordable in comparison to DC rates that I've seen. And I'm lucky in the fact that every week I get to go to DC and see neighborhoods like this, how they operate, where parking goes, where people park. And I know a lot of people who live in neighborhoods in buildings like that and the DC and surrounding area, and they make it work. And parking enforcement, due to those people who made the comments to us, it's nice to know that parking enforcement is happening behind the building. So it sounds positive. I know there will be some tough things that come through with it when it comes through, but I'm for it, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Who's next?
I'm happy to go next. This is Diane. yeah, I don't want to repeat everything that my colleagues have just said, but yeah, I think it's a great project in terms of being good use of space and infill. And the only comment, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, is that we really do need to encourage more green infrastructure in our buildings. I know this isn't LEED certified, and I don't know much about mass timber either, but it sounds like it has some positive sides to it that will be better environmentally than just a regular structure that we normally see here. So I'm happy that you're taking into consideration those comments about solar, and I appreciate that. And yeah, excited. It seems like it's going to be a fantastic addition to our city. So thanks.
Great, Teresa.
Yeah, again, we're just going to echo the same thing. I was quite pleased with the plans that were presented. I appreciated the applicant's responsiveness to our questions and even accommodations on things like the trash room and so on. Most of my questions were limited to quality of life, and I think that's what most of us have talked through, aesthetics and so on. Parking situation, to Mr. Iams and Sales's point, downtown living is a different kind of living, and most people who choose that kind of lifestyle recognize that there are going to be some things that they are going to give up. And if that's parking, then that's what that is, meaning that there's proximity to parking, but maybe not on site. The only recommendation, or at least consideration I'd like the applicant to consider as this thing gets developed is the bike situation. I know it's a very simple thing, but maybe something in the alley, something, because people are going to be biking. And I know you have elevators, but it's still going to be a little bit tricky. We don't want to see bikes on the little, Juliet balcony. That's what it's going to come down to. But other than that, I think I echo Alderwoman Tierney's comments as well. This is the type of development that we'd like to see going forward. I think this is a true test case in a smaller scale of what is possible in a redevelopment. And I'm glad that there's attention and detail, going forward on this. As far as public participation and comment, this was published in the paper prior to the last meeting. There's been plenty of opportunity for discussion or any kind of response to this project. So I'm not concerned that the public hasn't had ample time to weigh in. But yeah, very supportive and excited to see this come to fruition. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Tom Sparky News.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Tom, let's give Tom an opportunity if he
Absolutely
wants to chime in.
I don't see him on the screen. That's why.
Yeah, and he may have had to drop off. Go ahead, David. You had a.
I just wanted to clarify that I think the 2 bike racks in the parking garage right behind is a better option than an alley outside. So I'm happy with the 2 bike racks inside.
Yeah, and it's close, and I've actually parked my bike in the garage, and they're decent lot. They are decent places to lock your bike, and it's pretty well lit. And I think if somebody had a nice bike that they really wanted to protect, there is the elevator to take it upstairs, and I think that's fine. I know plenty of people who have stands. If you have a nice bike, you have a stand that you hang your bike in your living room, and that's sort of a object to art. So that's like you mentioned, Teresa, that's part of city living. So
hey, Alex, how about bike cages? When they put them in a parking garage, a little corner that can't be used by cars, they make a bike cage. You know what I mean? So it's more safe.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would have liked to see some space in the basement, as a designated lock bike cage or something like that. But I certainly understand the constraints of the space that they have and they need for the restaurant.
Jerry's son always had one hanging on his wall.
Yeah, I mean, we should all keep that in mind, as suggestions for maybe slightly larger projects, and that's because those are always nice amenities for people who, to encourage people who might just want to have a nice bike to get around and not a car. So anyway, so my piece on this, I agree with what everybody else has said, and I'm especially, and I hate to always, this is Annapolis, and of course we always come around to parking, but having gone through that, I'll be kind and say debate on, the residential permits at Uptown at Murray Hill when I was chair of the transportation board, I'm sort of sensitive to that. And, I'm pretty well versed in what that code is, and that they're not eligible for that. And so one of the things that is even possibly a condition on this if we approve it, on condition would be that the applicant expressly put a sentence in their leases that say you're not eligible for residential parking permits. I just think it's really imperative that gets spelled out, so it's crystal clear that you don't qualify, and that there can be no question about nobody was misled. So I don't know. I don't know. We can debate whether that's a condition we want to.
I don't know if we have the authority to do that.
Yeah, or
legal
as a recommendation, a strong recommendation or something. I don't know. I mean, I think they've gotten that message pretty strongly, but you know how people sort of after the fact, residents sort of feel aggrieved, and I know the Uptown at Murray Hill was a different story, and how that went down, but just wanted to be really clear about that. Also, that I think the mass timber framing is interesting, because I didn't realize until watching last week's meeting, or last 2 weeks ago meeting, that it was this mass timber frame. I thought it would be the traditional in this case 2/1 kind of concrete first floor for the retail restaurant use, fire protection, and then stick framed on top. But I really like that mass timber framing, because it really provides the same benefits and layouts as concrete poured stories, but it's much cheaper, more environmentally friendly, fewer resources, and it adds like a really interesting design element to it. So anyway, I think that's pretty innovative, and
it can be erected really quickly too. That's the big one.
Yep. And there's going to be a lot fewer concrete trucks having to roll down West Street and sit out front. They'll have to do that for the first floor, but and pouring the foundation and stuff. But they're not going to be sitting out there for twice as long. So that's really nice. On the balconies, I think given the width that's allowed, you even with the 33 inches, I don't think that's really even enough to get a chair on without your knees sort of going through the railing. So I don't have any problem with what they've proposed, and being able to have sort of these large French doors to open into the street. You can still stand in your living room and look out into the street, as a balcony, without necessarily even having to go out on the balcony. So I don't have any issues there. And I'm initially was concerned about the width of the sidewalks, and I think 5 feet clear space on West Street is enough. Ideally, I'd always like to have 6-foot sidewalks for just to make sure that everybody has a lot of space. But right sizing the tables and stuff will ensure that both on West Street and Colonial that there's enough room for people making the corner and walking over and grabbing their cars out of the garage or whatever. So I'm all satisfied with that. The trash room also, I'm really happy to see that, because that having the place to put the cans or dumpster or whatever it is, and be able to wash it out into the grease trap really makes for a much pleasant experience for people who happen to be walking by. So I'm really happy that's done. So this, as everybody else said, this kind of infill is great, and I'm really happy that it's locally owned and operated. It's these folks are invested in the community, in other businesses around the community, and what's really nice about that is the money that's collected in rents and that stuff that stays in the community. It doesn't go to some external owner who's going to take that money and take it someplace else. It pays for people who work here, local accountants, all that kind of stuff. That money stays in the community. I really really like that this kind of small infill project is all locally owned. So let's, hopefully we'll see a lot more of this. So I'm very, very much in favor of the project.
Great.
So, you know, if there's, I think at this point that the only question that I have is whether we want to have any, you know, any recommendations. Certainly no conditions. I think at this point.
I have one concern to be
Yep.
addressed,
Okay.
but I mean, it's, you know, Airbnb, you could, let's be honest, if you ask somebody to pay rent on this place and they're small, maybe you get 2,500 to 2,200 a month. I don't know. But if you Airbnb it, you might get a heck of a lot more than that. So you look at it from a business perspective, are we really creating housing here, or are we going to create more Airbnbs in the future? I mean, we've got the good word of the developer, and it seems like it'd probably be rented apartments, but you know, what do you know? How do you make sure it is? That's a problem for the city as a whole. I don't think we're going to answer that here today, but just a note. That's the devil in the details.
No, and I agree with you, Ben. I think that's always going to be, I mean, that's definitely an issue and definitely something that's going forward. I just think, yeah, you're correct. It's more of a city, you know, rules kind of thing or policy type of issue, not just something added as a requirement in development.
And I got to be honest with you, this is, if I was going to put Airbnbs in the city, this would be one of the best places to do it. I mean, you're on West Street, you're above a restaurant, it's smaller for people who fly in. It's great. It makes sense to me. And it's not going to really aggravate any neighbors. But for the people on the council that are worried about making new housing and making affordable housing, just a note to them that they're going to have to change laws and whatnot to ensure that, because we can only approve and do so much here. Just a note, still for it.
I agree 100%. I mean, I wrote a piece that was published in a variety of places called Housing, Not Lodging, if anybody remembers that, about problems with that Airbnbs cause on neighborhoods. So I agree with that. And you know, obviously that's not in our purview, but I hope the city council will take that up again at some point.
I don't have, I think the most, like I said, our issues, or my issues at least, were aesthetic or, you know, living type of issues. So I don't think any requirements or restrictions are necessary.
Okay.
I think the only thing that I would say, the only thing I say we could say is we recommend that it's made expressly clear to anybody renting that they're not eligible for parking, as you said, Alex.
But that's more, I don't think it's in our purview. That's more of an.
It's not in our purview. I mean, we could certainly recommend it, but it's not. It's down another level. So that would be the only thing I'd even consider, but I don't think we need that.
Yeah, I mean, in our findings, we could just mention that. You know, so at this point, I think, you know, our options are to approve with conditions, or not.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this development.
I will second that.
Now
Okay,
you can.
so any further, we've obviously had a lot of discussion on this. Any further discussion on this motion?
None from me. No conditions to add.
Yep, same here. Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Any abstains or nays?
Point of order, Chairman, do we have quorum with Mr.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so sorry, I know Thomas left, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we need four for a quorum, and we have 5. So.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that.
Yep. So with the vote of 5 yay votes, we approve this project without any conditions. So Mr. Danik, Mr. Hanna, congratulations. At this point, just in terms of process, I wanted to say that we are in the process of working up a new form, you know, an updated format for our findings and opinion on these kinds of projects, and you know, we're working that with our external counsel. So what I wanted to say was that this is probably going to take us longer than it has in the past to get our to issue our written findings and opinion. And I'm just apologizing in advance that it's not going to, as uncomplicated as this project is compared to some, that it's going to, we're working through that new process to issue the written findings and opinions. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but clearly you have our vote of approval, and I guess I'll leave it to staff, as to how far you can go with that without our written opinion issued yet. But I just wanted to say that if it takes a little bit longer than maybe anybody thinks it should, the reason for that is because we're working through a new process to get those issued. So I just wanted to relay that explicitly up front here. Okay. So at this point, that brings us to the last item of any unfinished business, which we don't have. So at this point, we have reached the end of our agenda, and I would offer if anybody wants to offer a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all, the applicants, staff, for attending tonight's meeting, and appreciate everybody's work. Thank you.
Thank you.